So this week in the Lords, there's been lots of peers playing ping pong. And you might be as bemused by that statement as I was when I heard it. Ping pong is part of the process that amounts to the disputes between the Commons and the Lords. And because the Queen's speech is coming up and we're about to have prorogation, I don't know what that means either, really. But anyway, it's the end of term, as the doorkeepers have just explained to me that there's lots of time off, and they said it's like the end of term and you celebrate what you've passed so far. But anyway, because we're coming to the end of this part of the democratic process, they need to get loads of bills through. So this is what ping pong is. I thought I'd explain. You have a bill that comes from the Commons, and it then is all of the process of that bill is then repeated in the Lords. So you have a second reading, and then you have a committee stage, and then you have a report stage. I've bored you rigid with this in relation to the domestic abuse bill, which I've followed through. And then you have a final piece of legislation that's sent back from the Lords with all the amendments that have passed or whatever, goes back to the Commons. When it gets to the Commons, they look at all the amendments that the Lords have added in, and then they say we don't agree with half of them, or more than half of them. They send it back. And the Lords then are meant to accept that and say, oh, no, we accept it. But certain times, some people will say, no, we insist on keeping this amendment or that amendment, and we're going to force it to a vote yet once more. And because in this instance, the Tories never have a majority in the Lords, they keep losing. So it ping-pongs back between the two houses, which is what the ping-pong is. The point about ping-pong is that you have the opportunity in ping pong to speak spontaneously from the chamber, which is very different than most of the time the way it's organised during lockdown. So you have to be in the chamber to speak, and you can just say, I want to speak. And this week I actually did speak on ping pong on something which was completely anti-democratic, and in a way I felt guilty, and I had to start off saying, look, usually I think the Lords should at this stage in ping pong concede, because the democratic chamber is the House of Commons. The Lords, what are they? They're just scrutineers. They're not meant to do this, and they're abusing their power. But it was the issue of leaseholders and cladding, and it just seemed totally irrational to me that in a perfectly sensible fire safety bill that the government have stuck their heels in and will not concede any possibility of helping leaseholders who are facing absolutely catastrophic bills for fire safety measures. The one group that can't pay them, so they haven't made it equal that if you're a freeholder or a contractor, or you make cladding or any of these things, you don't pay, the leaseholders pay. And people are going bankrupt, losing their homes. It's a disaster, so I can't understand why the government won't concede. So I went against democracy, argued in the ping pong for an amendment put forward by the Bishop of Albans, which was actually very well argued for, pleaded with the government to be sensible, and said I knew it was anti-democratic, but I was giving them another chance, and actually that amendment won. So the government have now got a real problem because it's ping-ponged back to the Commons, and I don't think the Lords are ever going to let it go, and we're about to be prorogued and we're about to end the term. So that's the thing. When it came to the domestic abuse bill ping-pong, I actually decided that it didn't really matter what I thought about the different amendments that had come through, because generally speaking, in ping pong, I think that the Lords should show some humility and actually not speak and just say we accept it. So that's my double standards yet once more for you. The other things that I've been doing this week is that I tried to speak on a debate on the race report. Sadly, I wasn't balloted for that. I wanted to just note that that race report, which has been absolutely demonised and trashed by people who simply just don't agree with the arguments within it, needs to be properly debated in the House of Lords. I mean, there is no point in having a House of Lords unless you actually use it to scrutinise things like the race report. Instead, what we had was, I think, probably half an hour at most. I was balloted out. People got a minute and a half. The Labour Party front bench spokesperson, who got 10 minutes, made it fairly clear from everything she said that she had not read the report. She characterised it by what she had read in the media or on social media, and was disgraceful in the way that she characterised and character assassinated those who wrote it. I was really furious and shocked. But I did talk to some people afterwards and say, look, the one thing we could be doing here, there's time, there's space, we've got nothing better to do, would be to sit and go through each section of that race report line by line, just like we scrutinise pieces of legislation, and everyone could go and you could say, well, does this hold up? Look, the race report isn't a perfect document, it's got flaws, let me tell you, but it should be taken seriously. Instead it's treated far too much as part of the culture wars on both sides, and it's really annoying me. I also talked about care homes, and you might have seen the speech, but that's one thing. I've just come out of a debate on a report put forward on alcohol, and it's just my kind of final thing to note. It was a report commissioned on alcohol. The government had been asked to take it seriously, and it was like being in a temperance society meeting. It was incredibly nanny statish. But the main thing about the Lords that I've realised is everybody who spoke discussed how it's the poor that suffer most from alcohol. So they do it in this way that makes it sound as though they are saving the poor from themselves. They attack the government because it was put forward, and they say the government's not doing enough, the alcohol companies are all evil, and everybody is trying to poison poor people by giving them cheap alcohol. Apart from the degradation of the agency of ordinary people in this country, it really shows you that the way that people think that they're helping in the Lords is acting as some kind of Victorian, chastity society, almost going around and collecting up poor people and sort of doing to them. And I suppose it's the most distasteful aspect of being in the Lords that I really can't stand. I will finish off by saying that I started off this morning on Talk Radio, and I just happened to arrive at the time when Extinction Rebellion had been hammering away at HSBC. Never have you seen a more ineffectual group of protesters as they were hammering with their hammer and chisel. Those people have never hammered a nail in their lives. It was pathetic. Working people, they are not. But I was particularly irritated about that Green protest, because so much of the discussion at the moment around Greens is basically going to mean that ordinary people in this country are going to have to pay huge amounts of extra money for even heating their own homes. Driving is becoming impossible, and you're going to have to pay if you do it. Flights are likely to be priced out of anyone's range. So for all of these lords and ladies sitting around saying they're going to save the poor in relation to alcohol, they're also going to starve and make the poor pay when it comes to zero carbon. And it's just the double standards. We at the... I haven't got it. Oh. Right, we at the Academy of Ideas, that can be kept in, Ella, actually have brought out a pamphlet which is really good, one of our letters in Liberty, which is called Greens, the New Neo-Colonialists. You really should read it, because I think what Austin Williams does in this is just explain why it's not just harmless protesters. Don't just kind of react against it. They shouldn't. I don't want them to be locked in prison, as everybody's saying. We've got laws, they're doing criminal damage, do something with them, fine them. That's not the point. The point is the politics of it. And the politics of it are reflected in the House of Lords, in the House of Commons that keep going on about COP26. And by the way, Sky were there filming them. You felt like almost congratulating them, because Sky have now got a daily Environment Watch, Climate Watch programme. So all that they are is a slightly militant version of mainstream politics. So don't let's just have a go at Extinction Rebellion. Do read Letters on Liberty on the new Green Neo-Colonialists, and let us know what you think of it. But it's time that we started taking this environmentalist threat to the poor seriously, because we're really going to have to pay. People are going to have to pay.